Today's topic is on piecing in the hoop. So and when I talk about piecing in the hoop, I'm talking about paper piecing or flip and stitch. It's basically it's not necessarily quilting in the hoop, although you can do it, stitch it on, what do you do it? On batting, wadding, if you wanted to. But for me, I like to do mine a lot of times just on stabilizer or wash away stabilizer so that I can then add the batting on the backside and quilt it. So this is the project that we're going to be working on. As I tell everyone, you have to have a plan before you start your digitizing project. I have my plan. So, and I know what it is. I worked it out. I made up my little notes on my paper, but for us to go through how we're going to digitize this, I thought it might be easier if you actually watched it stitch out so that you could see where my head was when I digitized this. Because there's multiple ways if you've ever downloaded someone else's design and you liked how they stitched out, use that technique. I just did it my way. So there's multiple ways to create something. We're going to just see what Lisa's way is. So, oh, good. Glad, Jeff, Adam, that your dad told me that the package arrived. So I'm all excited. Okay. All right. So step one of my plan is to have just a stitch out on my stabilizer. And so that you can actually see it, I used black thread on cutaway stabilizer so that when I took a photo, you could actually see it. I would not do that. I would use a neutral color thread because this is everything that you're stitching in your hoop is basically a construction or placement seam. It's not decorative. So I use the same color thread, neutral, to match all of my fabrics. For this one, I use black thread so that you guys could see it. So the first thing that stitches is my entire shape, which is my Christmas tree shape. And this is based upon the graphic that I have that we'll see once I get into the software. So I put a placement line down. What does this do? It gives me an idea on the shapes of the pieces of fabric that I need to create. This design, the design that I did here, it started out as being a very simple tree. Basically, one fabric for the tree, one for the trunk, two for the sides, and then two for the other side. So very, very simple. If this is new to you, that may be the way to go because it would be a great test sew and it stitches out very quickly. And then you're like, oh, now I can do really more complicated piecing in the hoops things. So first thing I stitches is the placement stitches so that I know where my fabrics are going, or at least a general idea. So the next step is that I place the first piece, which is the trunk of the tree. I place that fabric on top of the place where it's going to stitch. So I stitch it, I put it there, and then I stitch on it. Now I use scraps. So a lot of times after I stitch it like this, I will trim it kind of close. I remember when you're quilting, you have 1/4 inch seam allowances. So normally when you're doing this, it's 1/4 inch. So I'm not perfectly stitching, but it's going to stitch. So that's stitching it, attaching it to the stabilizer. Okay, so I've stitched this piece of fabric in place and it's on my stabilizer. Again, I'm using black thread so you guys can see it. The next piece, because this is what we call stitch and flip, I know that I've digitized it's going to be that left-hand side. So I put my fabric that's going to be in there right sides down on top of the trunk so that it will stitch a seaming line up and down. Okay, stitch it so that you then flip it and press it. And that's when you use a little iron or your finger press to press it so that's out of the way. And that's your construction. And then the needle moves over to the next place. So that's the next thing. So each time this is doing it, this is a new color change for this. So this design is going to have a bunch of color breaks because even though I stitch in the same color thread, your machine needs to stop. Okay, so my needle moves over here. So the next piece that I'm stitching, this is number 4, number 5. Guess I skipped number 4. It's basically going to be the same fabric, right sides down, stitch it, flip it out of the way, and then I put the next fabric, which is part of the tree. So you're building and building and flipping and stitching and flipping. So when this one stitches a line across, it also does a line that goes diagonal to show me where to trim this next one. So you're stitching and flipping, trimming, stitching, next line. And do you see how there's a little line going diagonal? That's so that I know when I flip the pink one up, that next seam is going to be there at the top. So it's kind of, as you can see, it's kind of hard to explain with this, but hopefully these pictures kind of help you in my thought process, because you need to know if you want it to seam it and then tell you where it's going to, because otherwise, if you don't give it that position, that diagonal that's going through on the cutaway stabilizer or the stabilizer, the extra piece, when you flip this up, you're not really sure where the next one's going. So you kind of have to have 2 lines, the seam line and then the end line. So you flip it up, trim it, push it into close so that you can continue seaming, stitching, flipping, etc. This is Digitizing Embrilliance. That's the only software I use. So this is actually done in StitchArtist level 1. Okay, so I'm just giving you the steps on how you can do this in StitchArtist level 1. You don't need anything fancy. There's nothing automatic about this. This is a great way to practice drawing with points. So Bonnie Lynn happened to mention she's drawing over some favorites to practice your drawing with points. This type of practice of doing lines, a great way to practice drawing with points because you're really only clicking twice to make straight lines. It's really kind of handy. So once I finished my tree, which, here it is. Here, you can sort of see it from this backside. I'd like to put, if you saw my finished one, it had a border, like a log cabin type border. Well, I only do 2 of them. Okay, so the last thing that stitches after my tree is stitched, because I basically did the same thing with the sides and back and forth and went through there. The last thing that stitch are these 2 border pieces. Now, it's only the top border and the bottom border. I don't attach another one here. Could I? Well, yes, but the seam would only go to this point, down to this point here at the bottom. Whoopsie, out of focus. It wouldn't continue all the way through because, as you see, this is going beyond my hoop. I would have to make this block smaller if I wanted to do this entire border also in the hoop. I wanted to do the block as big as possible. I know how to sew with my sewing machine. So once this is done, because I'm going to do the embroidery on it next, then I take this out of the hoop. I put my 2 strips on it, sew straight, flip them out, press, and I have my block, which basically looks like this guy. So if you notice, the bottom one and the top one are flipped up, and then the only 2 lines I did were on the sides on the back, and then I sewed the red borders on the other one. So that's one way of, if you can sew a straight line, then it's really easy just to keep adding the borders. Do the hard, complicated stuff in the hoop. And I don't say this is hard, complicated. It's just, this is the crazy stuff. This is what you need to do. So let's go pop in the software now and see if we can figure out, or we'll figure it out. I'm going to show you exactly how I did this whole process. Hopefully you kept that in your mind when we were going there. So here we are in the software. And this is what my in the hoop design, or my pieced in the hoop design, look like. If you notice, let's expand it's called PP tree here. It has a whole bunch of objects and lines. And yes, I did name them. so that it's like the finished size, the trunk location, the tree location, the trunk tack down, the left background, the right background. I went through and named all these because otherwise, if you're just looking at that color break information, you're like, what on earth is this? It doesn't know. And then my other designs that I have here are separately, just because they're separate. They don't have to be, they cannot be part of it. But the icicles are all part of one design. And there are a whole bunch of just straight lines that are made out of French knots, which is a level 2 function, but that is what that is. And then the last one are a whole bunch of flakes, which are just simply run stitches that are made into snowflakes and then copy and paste it. So I keep all of my these things in one design. It just makes it easier because when you're looking at your object tree, if all those pieces were separate, it would be really hard to find stuff, especially if they're all called run or line. It's just it's kind of crazy. So the way that I'll show you how I named them, but I just wanted you to see that this is my design on this page, and in my object list, this is how it looks over here. Okay. As you noticed, I have 10 colors, 16 color breaks in here. That's irrelevant when it comes to this because pretty much all of these, until I get to the blue here at the bottom, these 2 colors, these are all the same thread color. I don't change my thread color at all because I'm seaming. So if I were to choose this and if I were to do this design out of regular fabrics, I'd probably choose a light gray, cream color, something just like you would with sewing. If you're a quilter, you don't keep changing threads to match it. You pick a neutral so that it kind of blends in. You don't choose black, which will show up on the backside. But for photography, it works better. All right, so let's start a brand new design. I have my hoop. It's my 5x7 hoop. And I'm going to bring in my image. So I'm going to click on the image button and, I have to go find it. Pikes Peak Holiday Tree sample pattern. I guess that's it. So this is my graphic. Now, this would be a great one for you guys, something to start with. Where did I find this one? I used Google, paper piece tree. Okay. So if you want to do a practice one, this would be a great type of one to practice with because there's not a whole bunch of lines. All you have to do is it gives you the instructions. This 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, and 6, and boom, you're done. Okay. In fact, just to keep this simple here, this is the one I actually did, which is the same design, but it just has a whole bunch more lines in it. Just to keep it simple so that I'm not here till 10 o'clock at night, let's work on the sample pattern. Didn't even think about doing that. So I'm going to click on open, and it brings it in the center of my hoop here. Now, when I click on it, I'm going to hold down the shift key because it has the sizing handles on it. And if I hold down the shift key as I resize, that allows you to bring it out as large as you can so that it's working inside your hoop. I usually don't like to go beyond the hoop or at the very edges. Make it as large as you want. This is how I'm making it as large as I can here. So now I have this numbered, or it is numbered here, the stitching order. And when it comes to paper piecing or foundation piecing patterns, this is normally what you'll find. So if you go to Google Images and you go up free paper piecing patterns, this is what you'll find. A whole slew of them that kind of look like this. So let's talk about, now what do we do? Well, if you remember, the first step that I did before was I drew shapes so that I knew exactly how big my pattern pieces needed to be. I'm a scrapper. I dug all this fabric up for my little scrap bags. So the pieces basically have to fit here like this. All right. So the first thing I need to do is bring in, now I'm going to, first of all, I want to make this a little lighter because it's pretty dark. And as soon as I draw lines on it, we're not going to be able to see them. So while my graphic is selected, I'm going to bring down my transparency just so that it's grayed out in the background. I can still see it, but it's not me and blocking everything. Chris says, you're working on a mystery quilt for Project Linus. Maybe this would have been much faster in the long run. Well, unless you're really fast at paper piecing by hand, it would have worked. But doing in the hoop, it's a great way to just push the button and go. Although you really have to babysit your machine because it's not like it's taking a lot of time. The seams are, they're fast stitching. That's just how it goes. Okay, so I have my graphic here. I've grayed it out. First thing I'm going to do is save my work so that if I need to come back to it, I can. So that way I'm saving is I'm going to go to the File menu, Save Working File As. This is a power user tip. I'm not stitching this anytime soon, so I don't need to save both stitch and working. Can I? Yes. I don't have to. So I'm choosing just to save my working file as, and I'm going to call this Facebook Tree. All it does is it saves the working file. So it's not saving any stitches yet. We don't have any stitches to save. So that's the way it goes. First thing I want to do, stitch, is a boundary box on my stabilizer. Okay, how do I do that? I'm going to use the shape flyout here and grab a rectangle. I'm going to left click, drag my mouse right along the line, and it puts a rectangular shape right on the screen. Now the color, let me change this color to something a little darker. Maybe we can see that a little better. It's a line that's here. Let's go to the Shapes tab, because if you notice, let me zoom in on one of these corners. And we went to the over here top. Do you see how that corner's round? It's not going to be round on my quilt. So I want it to be square and pointy. So how do we make that rounded rectangle that we drew with the flyout shape round and pointed? We go to our Shapes flyout here, and where it says corner radius, we're going to actually type this as a 0, hit enter, and now we have a rectangle. So I'm going to zoom back out to my hoop by clicking on the compass rose here at the top. See that compass rose? I'm going to click on H for hoop, and it zooms back out real quick and easy so I can zoom in and see where I am. Now this is just a line. We've no stitches. So I need to give it stitches because I just want a running stitch. So I'm going to click on the running stitch here. That's a stitch type. I need to go to the run properties, which is right here. And it's going to say, what type of stitch do I want? This is just a notification stitch. It's just going to be in your hoop on your stabilizer showing you where your base fabric is. If you wanted to say stitch this on, you can stitch on anything you want. Cut away, tear away, wash away, muslin. I don't care. It doesn't, it's a personal preference. Mine was stitch as you saw in cutaway. Normally I stitch on wash away because once I do all my blocks, I throw the quilt in the wash machine and all the wash away stabilizer goes away. So that's just me. Stitch length, it doesn't really matter. It's just it's basically a basting stitch. I usually leave my default so I don't have to muck around with them. Okay. The next thing, so it stitches this outside fabric. The next one thing that it has to stitch or to give me a placement line for is this triangle. Might as well put that in there. So I'm going to put I have my, I don't want to use a flyout for this. I'm just going to use draw with points. So I'm going to click on draw with points here. I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard, which makes a square node because you're going to do a lot of square nodes. So this is when I'm doing this type of work, I'm using the control key a lot. So I'm going to left click, move my mouse cursor right at the corner point here, left click, move it down to the corner point here, left click, and I'm just going to hit the tomato key here at the top, which is the close button, and it automatically closes that shape for me so I don't have to click again. So be efficient. You don't have to add extra nodes. All I need is a corner, a corner, a corner. Hit the auto close button. We now have our line here. I'm going to make it a run stitch. Now, if you notice, it's starting and stopping at the top because it's doing this run stitch around that starts and stops in the upper right corner. Now it's going to stop and it's going to jump over to this place. Well, this is just a placement line, so I'm going to move this guy over to where this one's starting so that it's not jumping. Yes, I can move this guy actually over to here if I wanted to as well. I don't really care. That's just how it's going to do a single run stitch. If it overlaps itself, it's in the seams anyway. It's not that big of a deal. This running stitch here, it's going to start and stop at the top, but I really need to make a rectangle down here so I know what size that this guy is. So at this point, I'm going to click my little flyout guy, click, hold, drag, create my rectangle, and it's going to either jump unless I move my stop down to that corner. There's no way to draw this shape without overlapping something. This is just placement, just so that I have an idea when I stitch this on my stabilizer, this is the size of the pieces. So I have a general idea of what my scraps are going to look like. Some people skip this step. I'm just telling you how I do mine. Okay. Once I've done this, these are all the same colors, so they're all stitching out at one time. I'm either going to go to File and choose Save Working File, or get used to hitting Control or Command S as in save on your keyboard here. Okay? Constantly save your work. You don't want to lose your work. You don't want to. So save often. My rule of thumb is save as often as you never want to do that again. Okay? Computers crash, things happen. All right, so we now have our placement stitch, or we have this is just our positioning, whatever you want to call it. It's stitched on stabilizer so we know where our fabrics go. The next thing that's going to stitch, or the next thing we need to stitch, is basically this little guy here. I'm going to make him exactly the right size I needed him to be. This run stitch needs to stitch again to hold that little piece of fabric in place. Remember that little piece of fabric we had there? So how do I do that? Select it. So I'm going to click on it by itself, and I'm going to go to copy and paste. So it's going to run again, but this time when it runs, I'm going to make sure that the color is something completely different. I don't care what color it is. It just has to be different so that it stops again. Now, in the other one, you saw that I had names on these things. That's how I named these little guys. Click on the word that says run here, and this is Max Hoop. This one is Tree Fabric. This one is Trunk Size. Whatever you want to call these. It's just, so I'm looking at this picture here. It's all going to stitch out at one time, but next year when I open up this file and I'm like, oh, what on earth did I do? I know what these three are. These are just showing me, this is my big hoop, this is my tree fabric, this is my trunk size. Why would you also might want to do this? If you are pre-cutting your fabric with an electronic cutter, this may be handy for you. Say you want to pre-cut this tree to be the right size or maximum size right here. If you go to right click on this and you go to, left click on the color chip, go to the applique tab, or choose this as applique position, inflate it by, I don't know, probably at least 5 millimeters on the sides. Click save. Choose your cutting file format, and it will cut out that triangle. Let me get out of here. It will cut out this triangle out of fabric, pre-cut it for you. So you can cut out this ahead of time, and you can cut out the trunk ahead of time. You can just make sure they're whatever bigger size you want to. Me, I'm going off a whim here. I'm using all of my fabric leftovers that's going from there. Hopefully this is making sense. All right. So this is holding the fabric in place. I'm not changing any of my properties here. A 2.5 millimeter stitch is fine. It's actually these are going to get locked into place over and over again by stitching and flipping. So I'm not concerned about anything at this moment. My next point that I'm going to do is I need to attach this left side. So that's basically just a seam going up and down. Let's zoom in on that left side here so we can actually see it on our screen. So I need a running stitch going from top to bottom, or bottom to top, however you want to do it. Draw with points. Hold down the control key. Left click, right click to end, or hit the enter key on your keyboard. Since this is straight up and down, if you hold down the Alt or Option key when you're clicking your straight line, it will make it perfectly straight. It does need to be a different color than this one because we do need the machine to stop. So I'm going to go to my colors here and choose something that's completely different because I want it to stop here. Make it a run stitch. Now from my run stitches, when I'm doing, this is a seam because we've put the right side down and we're doing a seam up and down. You have a little bit of fabric hanging off of this edge on this side. The right side is over here. For me, I take this little start. I don't start the very end. I will move this in to do a little bit of a back tack. So it basically is going to start stitching here, go to this point, go down to the bottom, go to this point, and then it's going to stop. If you want a locking stitch in addition to this little seam here, go to the little bow tie, click tie at entry and tie at exit so that it will actually force to put a nice little tie here. Some machines, because if you don't put a back tack, or if you don't put a locking stitch here, it won't lock. It won't trim. It's going to trim because it's the end of the color. But if you don't want it to unravel, it's a good idea to add your ties entry exit. Okay? Hopefully this is making sense, guys. Haven't seen anything for a while except for somebody was an unhappy face that's going on here. If you have any questions, be sure to post them here in the list so I can see them. So if we stitched our trunk down, stitched our bottom background, flipped it out of the way, used a mini iron to press the seam. Now we're getting ready. We're going to move over. We got to do the same exact thing on this side. Can you copy and paste? Sure. Why? Because it's so much just as easy to go left click. I don't want to close it. That doesn't make any sense. But I right click to end, hold down the Option key to make sure this is a straight line, turn this into a running stitch, move my start down, move my stop up, change the color because it can't be the same color as the last guy. Oh, my color thing keeps moving off the list. It doesn't matter what colors these are. The biggest thing is that you are making the machine stop. Okay? Can you do them black, white, red, black, just alternate colors back and forth? Sure. Nothing wrong here. If you want to name these, I showed you how we named the top ones. It's the same type of thing doing here. So we have this guy we're doing a flippy guy, this guy, a flippy guy this way. You pressed at the top. One thing to make sure is that this fabric, if you saw in the pictures, you have to have a margin of your fabric over the top. So when you use your scraps, make sure that they're covering this seam here because that's one of the reasons why we put that seam here. But now we're putting the fabric in for the tree at the top. Guess what? We're going to draw with points again. Now I'm going to click on the draw with points, hold down our control key. If you hold the Option key at the same time, you don't have to adjust afterwards. Right click to end, change the color, move this back here. Yeah. Click OK. Make it into a running stitch. Move this guy over here and this guy into here. So that stitched this going this way. Now, we've taken this and we flipped it up to the top. Because now we want to attach the sides. But our tree is flipped up to the top. I find that on this one, when you have, we basically have done all of this part here, except I've added extra ones in here. When you have all this done and you flipped it up, you're going to put another piece down here. And this piece is kind of big. Okay, so it's kind of, it might move around on you. So before I stitch this guy, I'm actually going to do a running stitch going up here. And I might come back down to the other side because that's going to hold my tree fabric in place. And then I could take my scissors and trim closely if you have extras, because I'm doing this as a scrap buster. So I'm having to do another color. It can't be the same color as what this running stitch is here. I'm basically going to attach this tree that I just flipped up to my stabilizer in the back so I can trim it. And then I'm going to do the seaming ones here. So I don't know how I got zoomed out so far, but I need to see this entire tree. So I do have to be zoomed out a bit. Here we go. Because this stitched in place, we've now flipped it up, pressed it in place. Now we are going to use our left click, left click, left click, right click to end, change the color to something that's completely different so it stops. Set this to be a running stitch. This isn't a construction stitch. This is really just holding that fabric up there so that you can take your scissors and trim any excess that you have here. Because you're going to want to trim this excess and then this excess because that's seams. Can you leave it there? Sure. But if your background for number 5 and number 6 is light colored, and this is kind of cattywampus, you might have to trim it afterwards if you're more wanting to do that once it's all done. But for me, I would just rather trim it now in the hoop, use my little applique scissors and get it from there. So now I'm going to put this guy, now once I've stitched this tree in place, now I'm getting ready to do the same thing with the flip guys. Draw with points. Gonna hold down my shift key and my my control key so I can do straight nodes. Left click, right click to end. Change this color to something else. Make that gray, click OK, make it into a running stitch. This one is a construction stitch. It's holding that seam together. So I just move it in on itself just a little bit. If I want to put my ties, it's already remembered my ties at entry and exit, so that's not a big deal for that. Stitched it, flipped it, draw with points, control key, left click, right click to end, change the color to something else. Click OK, make it into my run stitch, move my start, move my stop, flip it out of the way. And at this point, depending on how I'm working in my thing, I have a couple decisions to make. Sometimes and you can see I did it on this one. I did do a running stitch basically all the way around again just to hold all these flapping things out of the way. Because if this was the end of my block and I'm just going to take it out of the hoop and then stitch another one because this is as far as I'm going, I do like to have all this loose stuff held. Okay, I don't like flapping stuff. That's not mine. So how would I do that? Easiest way for me is to take that max hoop that we did way in the beginning, go to copy, go to paste. It flings it to the bottom, which basically it's just holding everything on that page. So that's all just, and it's its own color break. So that you see, it's going to stop. So that just does a basting box all the way around. For me to do these two little flips on the top and the bottom, guess what, guys? Draw with points. I know this is a great project for drawing with points. We're just going to do a left click, I should have done an option on that. Right click to end, hold the option or alt key to straighten up that line, change its color so that it's something different. Click OK. This is going to be a running stitch. It is going to be a construction seam, so I move my lines in on itself. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom here. You do it both at the same time, put them both right sides down and stitch them both, sure, but I have a habit of losing one at a time, and the foot gets caught underneath the fold, so I'd make them different colors. Click draw with points, left click, option key, left click, right click to end. Whoops, I didn't hit the option, that one. Make sure it's straight. Run stitch, click on the color, whoopsie. Whoops, lost my color guy here. Boom, click OK. It's a run stitch, so I'm going to move my starts and stops in. And at this point, I'm just going to hit Command or Control S on my keyboard to save my work so I never have to do this again. And as I mentioned, I don't do the ones on the sides because then I would have to seam by hand and make sure that's straight. And I can just sew a straight seam. You either have to make it all fit in the hoop or you have to do it piecemeal. So there you have it. Super duper simple. That's all piecing, stitching, and flipping in the hoop. Nice and easy way to do this. Make 6 of these, put them on a table runner, attach them all together, and you have an easy holiday project. This one, as I did this side, I basically did the same thing, except I had the graphic that I used had different lines in it. They were just diagonal, so there was just a lot more drawing with points. It's the same process. If you're not interested in doing a tree is very simple to do, easy to do, nice practice, quick test sew, try it out, then go try the 50 million Mariner's Compass paper piece design, because you don't want to do the 50-point Mariner's Compass for your first project. Not my idea of a good time. Start simple, use up your scraps, and have some fun with that. And that's how we create our in the hoop design that's done by the paper piecing tree that was done in the hoop. A couple things that were brought up afterwards. Sorry, I have the hiccups now. I had thought about it a lot, and because I happened to be mentioning, or I talked about, that when we digitize, we do bring in a lot of our experience from our other art forms, whether it's blending colors with thread painting or with watercolors. You're layering light layers on top of each other. Or you're a quilter and you're doing chain piecing. So you're basically starting off, you're stitching down your chain piece, your 2 pieces of fabric together. You stitch off, you put the next one through. So you are basically chain stitching all these together. When you do paper piecing, you may have a pattern that you iron on or print onto your muslin fabric so that you know where all your lines are. If this is something that you're more comfortable with, we drew just the rectangle pieces, the triangle pieces. We did a placement line. If you want more lines in there, you're doing more complicated process, maybe just do a whole big running stitch of the entire design first onto your stabilizer. That would work. One of the things I wanted to make sure I showed you guys, since I am editing, let's go back into our software. Here, if you want to overrun, when you saw me draw this before, our lines were down to the end of this point. I had drawn them straight across the line. These are our run stitches that are seaming the background fabric to the trunk. If you want to, I'm doing a little back stitch here. If you wanted to, as opposed to doing that, you wanted to, let's see, move my Alt key, have these overrun. So it's basically, and you can actually have this start up on this side. This is going to start on the stabilizer, stitch down to the end. And you can actually, if you have room, go off the edge. Depends on how tight you are with yours. And that way you would not necessarily need these back tacks, because quilters know that when you're crossing, your seams cross each other, it's locking the stitches. They're not going to unravel. You just have to remember that when you're doing that, you have to make sure that this is actually going onto nothing, onto your foundation. It's not going onto the base fabric, because this is your right side of your fabric that's down, that's being flipped up, and that flipping up is going to cover this seam. So that's one of the things that I had shown for the other guy here. Whoopsie, here's this. There's this one. Same thing done with this. Move this up so that it's doing an overrun on that thing. The other thing that I had shown is, let's see. Here I have my original design. This is my BE working file. One of the things that's great about keeping your BE working file with all of your objects. So this has all of our named objects in it. If I'm in create mode and I click on an object, there it is. I can change the properties of it. One of the nice things about having this file is that I can go into my hoop properties, choose a different hoop, click apply and OK, and I can take this entire design. So I'm going to click all, choose, let me go into select mode and choose fit to hoop here. And it automatically resizes and recalculates all those stitches. Okay. This one has the extra stuff that's on it. But if I just wanted to resize just this paper piecing tree, I can hold down my shift key and make it taller to fit my hoop. Of course, I need to move, well, actually the icicles don't look too bad on it that way, but I might want to add more snowflakes around or do some changing. And I can save this off as a different size stitch file. It remembered all of the formulas. So this formula in create mode is right here. It knows that this whole box has to be a single run stitch to hold and 2.5 millimeters. So resizing your working file makes a huge difference. All right, guys. Thank you for taking some time for joining me today, and hopefully you found this interesting. I'll see you online soon. Oh, I forgot one more thing. That we talked about. If you notice on my sample here, I have log cabin. I'm a log cabin girl. I like my straight lines. If I had done this, okay, if I had added, say, the strips on this side, okay, sewing here, and I left enough fabric here on this side and for the strip going up, if you're a quilter, you know where I'm going with this. You take it out of the hoop, you fold your corners at straight edge, stitch a miter so that you can have miter corners going in a diagonal. I'm not good at that. I'm a log cabin girl. I like this. So I just do the top and the bottom and I do a straight stitch. But if you see, it wouldn't work on this side because I didn't leave enough here. But if you leave enough on either side of this one and this one, flip this out of the way, put your next piece down, stitch it down here, and only do a line from that seam down to the seam. No overruns here. Can't do that because otherwise it's not going to work. Then you can take it out of the hoop when you're done and you can miter your corners. So forgot that we had mentioned that in the other one as well. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Bye.